Hello and welcome. Today's project is all about the two big human needs that you need to know in order to enhance the quality of your life and to bring about that meaning that you've always yearned for. Now, these are huge. These blew my mind when I was thinking about them because we definitely need these two things. There's actually six that Tony Robbins, who I greatly admire, he's one of those big self-help gurus. I think he could be the biggest self-help guru out there. But he says there's six human needs. There's the need for certainty, the need for uncertainty, the need for growth, the need for connection, and the need for contribution. Now, I want to focus on the need for uncertainty and the need for certainty because these are huge. Why do we need both uncertainty and certainty in our lives? Well, it makes sense when you really think about it, but at first glance, it's kind of like, well, I don't really know. It's very complicated, and it really is complicated once you start to dive into it. But the reason is, well, the best way to actually look at it is the Paisley, the yin and yang, where there's the black and the white, right? And the white resembles the order, the black resembles the chaos. And then there's that black dot in the white Paisley, and then the white dot in the black Paisley. And that's like, okay, well, what does that mean? Well, you need a little bit of chaos in the order and a little bit of order in the chaos. So the proper path in life is the mediation between order and chaos, just being on that edge. And I would say yes, because you don't want too much uncertainty. That's anxiety disorder. You don't want too much certainty because that's just boredom. And then in the boredom, in the tyranny, self-tyranny or the tyranny of society, however you want to look at it, if you're living in too much certainty, you're going to unconsciously manifest toxic uncertainty into your life. You're going to bring about chaos, drama. You're going to bring about that pain and suffering unconsciously if life is way too certain. And that was true for my old self. So let's first talk about the need for certainty, because there's two certainties here. There's actually toxic certainty and then there's healthy certainty. Let's look at toxic certainty. So let's look at the ego, being so consumed by the ego, being so unconscious, right? And that's a problem because if you're unconscious, then you're acting out the impulses that come your way. There's no buttress against you and those little deities that live inside you, the sub-personalities, right? When you're so consumed with ego, which also means being unconscious, what happens is you're so fixated on your identity, who you think you are, and you're unwilling to step outside of this identity into unfamiliar territory, right? But you do that unconsciously to some sense with your impulsivities, right? You're bored at work, it's the same mundane routine, and then you start to flirt with the coworker. You start to flirt with marijuana or alcohol. You start to play around, and it's exciting. And that uncertainty, that novelty, it's very manipulative because there's toxic novelty and healthy novelty. And the toxic novelty will push you more into unconsciousness because then you start to be self-reliant, or not self-reliant, but reliant on these external crutches in order to get through life. And it causes problems because once you don't have that there at your grasp, then you actually start to get angry and frustrated, and it causes problems because also your tolerance level starts to go up, and then you start to consume more and more of it so that you can start to feel that normal again, right? Because the first time you smoke weed, it's going to be this crazy experience that's like, wow, it's so powerful. But the more you smoke weed, the more it takes more weed you have to consume to get back to that state. And over time, you're smoking all day, every day, and now you're in that state saying, oh my God, how the heck did I get here? And that's how you get here. It's one step at a time. So there's toxic certainty. So staying in what's familiar, and suffering can be what's familiar. There's a lot of people I know who's suffering from anxiety and trauma, and that's just become their normal. And all of their crutches around them, the reassurance, the victim mentality, the external crutches, it all serves, and it's all part of their identity. And they're not willing to burn that off in order to get out of suffering, because suffering is their normal. But then there's healthy certainty. Healthy certainty are those regular disciplines that stack empowerment and strength. For me, I noticed within myself that when I started to meditate and give back to myself and add space into my life, I started to notice that I felt better. My anxiety was lessening because I was doing things that were activating my parasympathetic nervous system, which is my rest and digest system. So I started to have some space, and the anxiety of work and the events that were coming up during the day were lessened substantially because I was providing myself with that space in the morning to meditate and journal and to structure all of my thoughts down so that I wasn't running around like I was someone with no head, right? And I noticed that when I would go to work, my anxiety was way less because I would show up there early, I would show up prepared, I would show up expecting the challenges, and I was meditating before I would work. And this helped me to handle the stress that I had over just going to work, because I thought that work was this daunting place, a big dragon I had to contend with. But soon enough, I realized that this is a dragon I actually can contend with if I prepared myself accordingly, if I got that sleep that I need, and if I wrote down my schedule the night before, if I meditated on it, if I visualized how I wanted the day to go. I'm just adding all of this healthy certainty into the uncertainty that life inevitably throws at you. It throws all of its challenges at everybody, but how are we going to handle it? Well, that's how we handle it. We have to add our certainty into the day, and that certainty is those disciplines. That's it. To get to healthy certainty, now you have to break out of toxic certainty, the conservative bubble that you're in, and you have to move out of toxic certainty into the unknown, into uncertainty. And the uncertainty are your new habits that you're implementing into your life, and you have to make these new habits into your new normal. You have to make them into your new normal. And now that they're your new normal, you can handle the complexity of life, because now you have a buttress, right? Right? You have this structure. And what's so interesting about the structure of these new habits is that, first of all, this is something nobody can take away from you. This is your thing. This is your sacred space. No one can infiltrate this space that you've accumulated for yourself. But then also, you start to treat yourself like you're actually someone you genuinely care about. So when I was working 18-hour days when I was in the film industry, I showed up to work an hour and a half early. Right, I got up early, I had my schedule written down, what time I'm going to wake up, what time I'm going to leave home, what time I'm going to eat, what time I'm going to meditate, what time I'm going to journal. So, I left home, I would drive all the way downtown to work. It'd be like 5:30 at that point when I got there, and I would sit in the car, I would meditate, I would journal, I would have my tea, I would sit there, take some breaths, and get myself in order, and then I would start my day. And I would do that even though I'm working 18-hour days. I leave work sometimes at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. It's ridiculous, the industry. But that didn't matter to me because I was still going to do my routines because I knew that I needed that time in order to prepare for the dragon that was coming at work. It was a stressful job. There was a lot to contend with. And I needed that time to myself in order to mentally prepare myself so that I wouldn't snap when I was there. Because we all have an emotional glass. You know, is it overflowing with water? The water represents the emotion, the baggage, right? Is it overflowing? Because if it is, then any novelty that comes into the glass, it'll just overflow. You'll react, you'll blow up, you'll get angry, you'll stomp out, you'll quit, whatever it is. And what if you could handle the uncertainty of life with half a glass full of emotion? Or maybe very little. Well, if uncertainty pops up, well, you can allow it to come in. There's a lot of space there. You're not going to blow up. You're not going to have a massive panic attack at that point. You're going to have that space and that energy needed to handle the little baby dragons or the big dragon that comes your way. So there's a randomness to life, and there's a randomness to life with everybody. But how are you going to handle that randomness if you're not giving back to yourself? If you're rolling out of bed in the morning and just going with the flow and you're just tackling everything and there's so much to do without making a list, without giving back to yourself, the stress becomes your new normal. The stress becomes your toxic certainty. And you're so used to being stressed. But then when you kind of sit back when you're alone and you kind of have that truthful conversation with yourself, you go, oh my God, I am running myself to a frazzle. I'm in stress mode all the time. I just didn't even know it because it's masked by this so-called, all this responsibility that I'm taking on. I didn't have that time to myself. And that's true. We forget about that. So when you're handling, when you want to change and go on this recovery journey, you have to step outside into uncertainty. But what's important here is that you want to shrink the dragons to as small as possible so that you're on the edge of development. You don't want to go out there and face this huge dragon and then it eats you and then you come home and you're like, well, I give up, I'm hopeless, and you fall back into despair. You want to voluntarily confront those dragons that you know you can confront, and then that increases your competence when you actually succeed in that. So when you voluntarily confront something, this activates different circuits than if you were just to stumble into chaos. When you stumble into chaos, that activates fear circuits, and since your glass probably at that point is overflowing, you're not going to be able to handle it. But if you plan for the uncertainty, oh my God, that activates new circuits. And when that activates new circuits, then you see yourself progressing somewhere. You get the dopamine kick because that's what happens when you progress towards a North Star. You get a dopamine kick. And you go, oh my God, I didn't expect that of myself. That's a new side of myself I never saw before. Oh my God, this is so cool. I'm capable of much more than I thought I was capable of. And that builds on your confidence. And now this confidence, it bleeds out into all other areas of your life. Not just that one dragon you decided to confront, but then it bleeds out into all the other dragons. Maybe I'm capable of handling that other thing that I'm not so fond of. Maybe I can go to that shopping mall even though it makes me anxious, or the doctor's office, or apply to that job, or get out of that toxic relationship, or quit alcohol or drugs or pornography. Maybe I can do that. But you have to start with those dragons that you know you can handle and wrestle with. Don't go for the big mother dragon right away. You got to build on yourself little by little. So set the bar low enough so you can complete that goal. You get that dopamine kick. You see yourself progressing in some manner, and then you go, "Oh, I can do more. Let's do more." Because dopamine, it actually adds energy into your physiological structure. And that energy that energy moves you towards the next goal. And that's what's so cool about dopamine. Is that you feel good. Oh, I can handle this thing. Maybe I can handle the next thing. Because when you feel good about accomplishing a goal, you get that energy. It's like, yes, you get that rush to be like, let's do the next thing right now. And that's where I'm going to leave you on today's episode. Thank you so much for being here with me today. If this video has resonated with you, please leave your comments below. And lastly, rise above anxiety. I will see you next time. Make sure to leave your comments below. Subscribe so that you'll be the first to know whenever I release a new video. And rise above anxiety. I'll see you next time.